Emotional intelligence requires that you master 4 interpersonal competencies. The first one is self-awareness, and Daniel Goleman calls this the keystone competency. It is the competency on which the other 3 are built. I'm not going to blow smoke at you. It's also the most difficult competency to master, so it's probably best to get this one out of the way first. It will probably take you the longest time to get this competency where you want it. So self-awareness is, again, the keystone to emotional intelligence, but it really starts you on your personal journey to understanding why you do things and why things might not necessarily turn out the way that you've intended. We all have habitual behaviors that may have served us up to a certain point. Depending on how our life has unfolded, we have coped in certain ways. We have taken on personas. We have taken on temperaments and approaches that in the moment might have served us very well. But we may be at a time now in our personal lives and certainly in our professional careers where what got us here is not going to keep us here. And what got us here is not going to take us forward. And that really is the journey of self-awareness, to really start to drill down on who we are and why we do things, and see if we can't get to the point where there is an aha moment and you actually make a very active decision that you can do things better. There are 3 competencies that make up the competency of self-awareness, and the first one is emotional self-awareness. It requires that you understand what triggers you to act emotionally. Now, there are certain things that, we all have low boiling points for. I don't do well with people who are not telling the truth. I don't do well with people who are condescending to others. My want to champion a better way kicks in. But then I can often act at meetings the way I wish I didn't afterwards. These are called emotional triggers. These are the things that when we feel them in our bodies, whether we realize it or not, trigger us to act in a manner that we would rather we didn't, or say things in a manner that we wish we could roll back, and of course we can't. So emotional self-awareness really starts to begin with understanding how your body feels when the emotional thermostat starts to get raised. So how do you do this? Well, it takes time, and I'm going to be very clear about this. At times, this can feel like chewing on glass, because no one really wants to walk all of this back to a time when perhaps they were betrayed by someone, hurt by someone, traumatized by someone, and of course develop this coping mechanism in response to that. But this is indeed what's necessary. We have to, in a very compassionate, humanistic fashion, be as kind to ourselves during this process as we would be to one of our patients and of course their families. But we do need to get down to, why do I act like this? And we have to be able to get to a point where we understand the sensation in our body just before we choose to act. So that when we feel our stomach turn, our fists tighten, your neck start to get tense, it is now a heads up, or a red light, if you will, saying, you're about to do something you're going to regret. Don't do it. So that when you can understand those triggers and then drill down to the why do I do that, the managing becomes much easier. The second one is accurate self-assessment. And again, this means that we have to admit shortcomings without being overly harsh. If you start beating yourself up, nothing good is going to come out of it. And Lord knows there's a line there ready to beat you up. So don't join the line. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to be able to have an accurate self-assessment that says, yep, you know, I act in that way, and that no longer serves me. And I am definitely going to put steps in place to make sure that that is a part of who I was, but it's not going to be a part of who I can be. And accurately put in a plan to go from here to there. And then the last competency involved in self-awareness is self-confidence. Not in the traditional sense of self-confidence where how confident do you feel about yourself, but in the sense of how do you influence the people around you. So, are you the person who walks in the room at work and everybody says, "Thank God"? Or are you the person who walks into the room at work and everybody says, "Oh God"? Because whether you realize it or not, you are more likely than not part of the problem as opposed to part of the answer. It's that kind of self-confidence. How do you influence the people around you and the situation around them? So, as you can imagine at this point, self-awareness is a journey. It's a journey inward, but it's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of fortitude, and quite honestly, I've never really bumped up against nurses who were not courageous, and certainly nurses who didn't have a lot of fortitude. It seems to be something that is part and parcel of the oath that we took. But you need to get in touch with your values. You need to take that journey inward and provide yourself with the luxury of time for introspection so that you can say, what do I stand for? What are my morals? What are my ethics? What are my ideals? What are my principles? And those things usually are fundamental, although they can change and be shaped over time. What you want to do is get in touch with who you are now, and then start to craft a plan to make sure that your body language speaks that your physical, your verbiage speaks that, and that your demeanor, everything about you is aligned with those principles, those standards, those ethics, and those ideals of leadership that you are aspiring to. So knowing your values is essential. And it takes time and introspection. It takes stillness, and it may mean that you might need some coaching and guidance along the way. But again, if you have the courage to do this, the return on the investment can be enormous. Keeping in mind that triggers are those situations and words that can provoke you into judgments and thoughts of reaction that, you wish you could roll back but don't. Trying to get in touch with those triggers and then moving on to the competency of self-management can make the difference in your life, certainly in your career. So, when you're taking that introspective journey along the path of self-awareness, you need to stay curious and not judgmental. All right? There is nothing to be gained by, putting on, some hot tar and finding a bag of feathers here. There really is everything to be gained by sitting down in a very sober, realistic fashion and saying, I can do better and I can be better. But I need to find out why I do what I do first, so that I can then, in that understanding, make a change. So staying curious with yourself is essential. You need to keep asking why. Everybody knows what they do, but why does this continue to be an issue in my life? Why do I have trouble working in teams? Why do I want to always take on the project alone? Why do I push myself to the point of exhaustion? Why can't I deliver on deadlines because I'm trying to make something so perfect that, of course, no one could say anything against it, and that's an illusion. So we try to figure out what we do. We have to really acknowledge and be very, very clear with ourselves what we do, and then try to then walk that back into finding out, What was the fuel behind that action? What's causing me to act in this certain way, to feel in this certain way, and then to take action on those feelings? But it has to be benevolent, it has to be humane, and most of all, it has to be kind to yourself in a way that you've probably never been kind to yourself before. So, I have a tool that you can use. And this is kind of one of those tools that you might use over time. It's not something that you're going to, maybe you can start over a weekend, but it might be something you want to keep in the drawer and pull out from time to time, because unlike your intelligence quotient, you can grow your emotional quotient, which is wonderful news. Every day you can become a better version of you. I think that's tremendous news. So if you take this tool that I'm showing you and you really have, get a good hot cup of tea and sit down and be honest with yourself. What are my strengths? And then to be just as honest with yourself as what are my shortcomings? And then really try to figure out what is it that gets under your skin and triggers you to act in a manner that you wish you didn't. So for me, fatigue is a big trigger. And I'm a busy gal. I do a lot of things. I am one of those people that, I'm up at an ungodly hour in the morning and I get started. And that day may not stop until maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night. And of course, you go to sleep and you're falling face down on your bed because you're utterly exhausted. And if I keep that up for too long, thinking like I'm still in my 20s or 30s, it catches up with me, and I pay a price for it, but unfortunately the people around me pay a bigger price. So one of my triggers is fatigue. And I want you to be as honest with yourself to know what are the things that cause you to act in a manner that shows you at your worst and not at your best. Then you want to also make a list of some annoying characteristics. Maybe you're a procrastinator. Maybe you're constantly late. If you have trouble filling out this column, ask your significant other, your friends and your families. They'll be glad to help you fill this column out. And I'm sure it's going to be a very long column because we all have annoying characteristics. But we have to be aware of those things when we're working in groups. You just have to be able to start to find the awareness that it matters that you deliver on time. It matters that you don't procrastinate. It matters that you don't go into analysis paralysis. Those annoying habits that hold you back and therefore hold the team back really can affect the perception that people have, and you need to be honest with yourself and again, drill down as to why you do those things. And then lastly, if you could change 3 things, just 3 things, and if you can't think of 3 things to change, figure out 1 thing that you would want to change over the next 3 months. All right, 1 thing or 3 things over the coming year that you would like to change. And then really start to do the work of drilling down to, here's what I do that I want to change. And how come I consistently, habitually do that? And start the introspective process of walking it back to its origins. Again, it takes time. It takes a lot of courage. It takes patience. And I'm hoping that you are going to do this in a very compassionate, benevolent manner so that you can get to the heart of something and maybe to the healing point of something, so that you can actually let it go. And in the letting go, you create space to embrace something different. So, managing those emotional triggers begins the journey, right? It means taking responsibility for your actions and then deciding that you're no longer at the mercy of these habitual behaviors. They no longer serve you. They slow you down. And now you need to slow down and breathe and just be still with yourself. If you have a really good friend that you can bounce things off of, wonderful. If you can invest in personal coaching or a mentor, wonderful. But This is rarely something that you can actually do all by yourself. You do need someone to mirror back to you your progress and also your hesitancy to embrace something that needs embracing. And when you find yourself triggered trying to stay with, try to stay with it and lean into it, so to speak, to stay with that feeling and emotion, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because in that emotion and in that discomfort is so much wisdom. Really trying to sit with it so that you can figure out and then master it. So observe how your triggers drive your emotions, and sometimes keeping a journal can be extremely helpful, but start to trace these things back to their origins. And again, time-consuming, but a huge return on your investment. Be compassionate with yourself. It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard. No one wants to acknowledge that they have maybe messed up and now have to own up. But it's worth it. And celebrate your small successes. Again, you've got to keep your own momentum going. Acknowledge again that you may need some assistance, and really commit to some good self-care regimes that are going to help you sustain the process down this journey, all right? Build stillness into your life. And I know for professional caregivers, that's like asking water from the moon, because we're professional doers. But the only way to balance doing is with non-doing or stillness. Go sit on a park bench and just zone out. Find yourself on a beach. Meditate, yoga, something where you quiet your mind and you're more attuned to your body and your surroundings than the endless loop of thoughts in your head. That's really what the stillness is for. Because once you quiet your mind, you're going to be able to access all the answers that you intuitively have, but are just too noisy to be able to get to. Allow yourself to be cared for. Another heresy for professional caregivers. We're so busy caring for someone else that we always put our needs last, or we never address them at all. And what I'm asking you to do is be mindful of the fact that you are indeed human. And one of the ways to build resilience, again, when you are a care for person, that you have to allow yourself to be cared for as well. It's the only way to be able to be resilient and weave in some kind of integration and balance into your world, so that you are not trying to do your jobs on the fumes of a compassionate nature, but you're doing it now on a full heart, ready to serve, constantly resilient and replenishing. And then you need more sleep. Now, I know you're laughing, and it's important to get at least 7, hopefully 8 hours of sleep. What we hesitate or are reluctant to acknowledge is that professional caregivers need more sleep than other people, because we're constantly giving. And you can't give from fumes. You must be rested in order to be able to do that. You must be rested to be in the demanding clinical situations that we put ourselves in. You must be rested to be in leadership. You cannot be a tired leader. It won't work. So you must find ways to rest. And if you can't sleep, you're going to have to find a way to be able to refresh and renew in the middle of the day, even if it's that 10 or 15-minute power nap that just resets the mode. You can't rely on that coffee and tea all the time to get you through. We're actually going to have to embrace healthier ways to keep us in the game for as long as necessary. But this sounds arduous, and it is, but there's a lot to be gained. All right, the insight that leads you through the self-awareness journey also leads you back to your authentic self. You know, the person who graduated nursing school and was so excited and so full of energy and desire and giving and joy. And, you know, life works on you. Life works on you personally, and life works on you professionally. But this is a way for you to be able to reclaim that essence of who you were back when you felt very genuine and very authentic, and have a sense of lightness, because this emotional intelligence journey of self-awareness allows you to let go of so much that you've been carrying, all the baggage along the way that you picked up. And you can let it go, you can honor it, you can thank it for how it served you, but then you can move on, and in the letting go, you create space for new ways of being and new ways of conducting yourself. There's a sense of comfort that comes now all of a sudden. You know, you're in your skin, and for the first time in a long time, you're actually happy with who you are, and you feel comfortable in your own skin again. And I promise you, people will pick up on this. It will be kind of like, did you lose 5 pounds? Did you go on vacation lately? Something's changed. But more importantly, you will have changed, and you will know what that is. You will have developed a sense of discernment, which means that you are going to feel the emotions that you always felt, but you're not going to feel like you have to jump into action each and every time you feel them. That you are going to be able to have an emotion, look at the facts, weigh things, have a sense of judgment and discernment, and then act in a manner that many of us who have professional heroes and professional mentors conduct themselves. So how often have you said, you know, someday I really want to be like so-and-so? Well, this is how so-and-so got that way. They developed their emotional intelligence beginning with self-awareness, and they were able to get that discernment that I know you can too.